Jazz is part of the makeup of Southampton's history. It manifests itself in a whole variety of different ways, from music to history to ethnicity. And if we start with the presumption that Southampton and jazz and history are all connected, then it allows us to start to examine the means by which all of this takes place. So for me, it's the beginning of an investigation rather than a statement of this is what it is. Well, Ben Webster and Coleman Hawkins, these are international black musicians literally arriving on our doorstep. It's a bit like not knowing about Bob Marley in Southampton or Muhammad Ali in Hedge End in Southampton. And Ben Webster, as he started to play at the club, there was somebody recording what he was playing. And he stopped and asked for the person to be, the tape machine to be taken away. Otherwise he wouldn't play. I listen to him a lot now. I listen to his style, I listen to the music, and I think, this is just magic, you know? Joe Harris was Jamaican, and he came from the Alpha Boys School in Jamaica, as many other great musicians came. He came down to Southampton, and he played at the Bassett Hotel and the Concord Club, and what a fine musician he was, with his own particular sense of style as well. And he had a good friend down who lived in Hedge End, and that's where he stayed most of the time. But we do remember his music, one of the great icons of black jazz, British jazz. He should be remembered much more internationally. So we're trying to do a lot more to make sure that the quality of his work is known much more than it is. Well, jazz was an oasis with regard to jazz musicians, because the experience that jazz musicians had in America was that they weren't even allowed to go into the front door of a jazz club, they weren't allowed to eat with other musicians, and segregation was a big feature in entertainment in America. When they came to the UK, it was an oasis because they could walk in the front door, they were treated with a great deal of respect, their music was appreciated, they could eat with other musicians, they could play to audiences that weren't segregated, so it was a whole different scene. And I think they felt as if they've entered a new world coming to the UK, despite the fact that the UK wasn't innocent when it came to racism. We had our problems here as well, but it was so much different, the experience here in the UK, than it was in the United States. Well, Sunshine of Your Love was kind of symbolic of a new era in which there were many other tunes at the time which were drawn from jazz and blues foundations. An example was This Wheel's on Fire, Julie Driscoll, with the Brown Organ Trinity, and they all played at the Concord Club in Southampton at one time. There were many other tunes that came out around that time that really were a break from the old form of music, which were more for their parents, and this was a reinterpretation and putting their own spin on it, which they could call their own, because every young generation wants to find music that belongs to them. If their mum and dad like it, it doesn't really belong to them, if you know what I mean. So in that sense, I guess Sunshine of Your Love was kind of symbolic of that kind of music. Well, the Beat Generation, I guess, was a recognition that the R&B artists who became famous subsequently drew their inspiration from jazz music, but the accessibility for young white audiences was the fact that they were modern and they were pop. People like the Rolling Stones, people like, I guess, Van Morrison and others, people like Georgie Fame, they came from a jazz background, but they were accessible to young people. And the Beat Generation were young people who grew up at a time when they weren't just older versions of their parents. They were young people in their own rights with their own likes and dislikes. and they found a new form of music they could appreciate. They weren't necessarily into the Frank Sinatra era. They were more into, the R&B and pop era. And so, in that sense, it was a genre that they could own for themselves. And the Beat generation were very different to their parents, and they exercised that difference in the culture and the art that they were experiencing and putting out there. When the Saints Go Marching In, a very well-known song all over the world, but it was a Christian hymn, and then it became a Negro spiritual, and it first became really popular by Louis Armstrong in 1938, which kind of takes us back to the originals examination of jazz in Southampton with Louis Armstrong and Nat Ganella. So Louis Armstrong is a constant theme all the way through, as it were. So we've now adopted it as the theme for Southampton Football Club, and it kind of seems to fit in so many different ways that people probably are not fully aware of. And so for me, the Saints Go Marching In really tells us the whole story of the connection from the early days